Members, good morning. It's time and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. Minutes of special meeting on the 10th of January and minutes of the meeting on the 17th of February. My apology. Now, the minutes have been forwarded to members. We have not received any proposals for amendments. So if there is no objection, members, can we confirm the minutes, please? My apology. Who would like to propose the confirmation of the minutes? Ms. Claudia Mo. Seconder, Deputy Chairman, and Mr. Kwok. So minutes confirmed. Item 2, information papers issued since the last meeting. Quite a number of documents were issued since the last meeting on issues that we have often discussed. The submission from the Hong Kong Leisure Services Staff General Union on reimbursement of medical expenses, that's been answered. And then the police force has asked about burial at Gallant Garden. And conditioned hours of work and meal break arrangements for various discipline services. A letter from the Civil Service Bureau. And then submission from the Hong Kong Marine Department Local Professional Officers Association. Excuse me. On the incident of collision of vessels near Lam Island. As you know, on the meal break arrangement for discipline services, this is an issue often raised, especially involving ambulancemen. The administration is given a response now. Now, the ambulancemen always complain that they do not get a meal break, and then the administration explained the conditioned hours of our work and the meal break arrangements. Members, do you think we should take up this item again later on? This item has been raised a number of times, and the administration has given a response many times. Well, we pass on the letter to the deputations, see what they think. If they're not really unhappy, maybe they can write back and then we'll see what we do. Yes, because the Civil Service Bureau has already given a reply. Actually, it's the Ambulancemen Association that's most unhappy. So we'll liaise with the Ambulancemen Association to see whether there is need for further response from the administration or whether we should discuss the matter further here at the panel. Thank you, Ms. Lau, for your suggestion. Date of next meeting and items for discussion. Can we invite the Secretary for the Civil Service and his team to join us? Good morning, Secretary. Thank you, Secretary. Permanent Secretary and Deputy Secretary for coming to the meeting. Now we are on date of next meeting and items for discussion. List of outstanding items for discussion has been forwarded to members. Ms. Claudia Mo wrote to us on the 8th of April about the procurement of Auto Track 3 by the Civil Aviation Department. The next meeting is on the 19th of May, Monday, 10:45 a.m. The administration has proposed to discuss the use of agency workers and implementation of paternity leave in the government and government-funded public bodies. Do you agree, members, or do you have any suggestions? Ms. Mao has raised her hand. Is anyone else going to propose other items? Ms. Claudia Mo? Thank you. I'm not going to repeat the content of my letter. It's about the sanitization period for civil servants and the monitoring. I think we need another meeting or another session on this item. I hope members will support me. And last night, of course, the Lemon Vessel Collision report was published yesterday. Now, it's already stated clearly that there were civil servants who acted grossly negligently, and there would be disciplinary hearing and so on. But we don't know who made mistakes when and how that happened. So it's totally unacceptable where the right to know is concerned because no information is given. Now, Professor Anthony Cheung mentioned yesterday he did not want to jeopardize or undermine the criminal investigation underway. But here we're talking about public interest. We are talking about 39 lives. Last year, the Commission of Inquiry named those in the wrong, but now you say you're afraid people will then doctor their testimony and so on. I think it's not fair. I hope there will be some more discussion. Now, you don't want to force members to invoke the Powers and Privileges Ordinance again to conduct an inquiry, because that's really time-consuming. So, the Civil Service Bureau, in the light of public interest and in the light of seeking justice for family members of the victims, would you try make this report public, and would you also explain to us whether the person will be suspended first before he's subjected to investigation or inquiry? And most importantly, for the Director of Marine, Liu Hanbo, he is on pre-retirement leave. Now, of course, we cannot comment on his criminal liability, but even for civil liability, that will have to go to court eventually. But within the structure of the civil service, do you think morally there should be something done about the retirement pension and so on? Can you please give us a detailed account? Thank you, Ms. Mo. There are 2 points. First, here is that the procurement of the auto track 3 by the Civil Aviation Department. Mr. Albert Chan has also written to the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. And then Ms. Claudia Mo has also talked about the follow-up on the Marine Department about the vessel collision case. Secretary, first, on the Civil Aviation Department, the tender for the new auto track system, well, it's actually better to take it up in other panels because it's about the tendering issue is a technical issue. It doesn't really fall within the jurisdiction of this bureau. On monitoring or regulation of work arrangement after a civil servant's retired, well, we could explain the system to Ms. Mo. But I would suggest that we first submit a paper to you, and then you decide whether there is need for more detailed discussion on the policy issue. On the civil aviation case, of course, we could also liaise with the Civil Aviation Department to address the concern about whether there's any interest involved. But as far as we understand, there isn't actually. But anyway, we will liaise with the Civil Aviation Department and we'll prepare a paper for you. About the report on the Lemma Island vessel collision case, Professor Cheung has already given a detailed account. I understand at the panel on economic services, on economic development, next meeting next week, it's going to be discussion. So again, I do not think it's appropriate for this bureau to discuss the matter at any length. Ms. Mao, I don't agree. Technically, of course, there is an issue, but here we are talking about one single retired civil servant. Now, you said you understand there's no interest involved, so you said you come to a conclusion, but you're not the court, and there's nothing in writing. You just say in one short sentence there's nothing, no interest involved. I think it's irresponsible. As for the vessel collision case, is about this morale of the entire civil service, in particular that of the Marine Department. You don't name names. You have to understand there are more than a dozen staff members at the Marine Department, and no names are given, but it's stated there's a problem. Then how do you expect people to still go to work at the Marine Department? How are they going to face the public? When they go and do ship surveying, for instance, how are they going to face those people there? So you have to give an account. I'm not asking you to give an account now. I'm just saying afterwards there has to be an account. Secretary, any response? 2 points here on the Civil Aviation Department case. I already undertook to seek more information from the department, and then we will prepare a report for you. And we also explain to you how we regulate the work arrangement of retired civil servants. And after you've read the paper, if you see the need for further discussion, we could do so. On the Lemma Island this marine disaster case, perhaps it's more appropriate for the Transport and Housing Bureau to give an account at the panel on economic development. On the part of the Civil Service Bureau, of course, we will follow the established procedure on matters such as disciplinary inquiries, and we must seek legal advice, of course, as to whether the ongoing criminal investigation may be compromised in any way, depending on the information we give. Madam Chair, I think that's totally bureaucratic, but whether we have a meeting on the issue is for members to decide. So, Chair Lady, please. Well, the clerk has reminded me on the 28th of April, Monday, the panel on economic development will discuss the investigation into Marine Department personnel in relation to the Lemma Island disaster case. Now, the Marine Department officers, they are civil servants. How come we are not invited? Oh, actually, members have been invited to join that discussion. Madam Chair, about the marine disaster report, the theme of it is about who is to be held accountable. It's not about the case, how it happened, or which department made a mistake. There should be names. A year ago, in that earlier report, there were names. How come here this is an internal investigation within the government and no names are given? Because you said that you're afraid people may then coordinate their testimony or whatever. But I mean, they could have done so a year ago if they had wished to do so. Now, okay, on Monday, the panel on economic development will discuss the investigation into the Marine Department in relation to the Lemma Island vessel collision case. So, members, if you're interested, you could join in at that discussion. And of course, when it involves the civil servants, of course, the Civil Service Bureau is always responsible. Now, no one else has asked to ask questions, so it's my turn now. So, can I ask the Secretary this first about the Civil Aviation Department system? You said it's a technical issue. The panel on economic development looks at technical issues, so that means we'll see technically whether the system is up to standard. And if after review it's found that the system is actually not quite up to standard, or if the procedure followed has not been right, maybe it did involve conflict of interest and so on, then would you agree that this panel ought to follow up on that? That's the first question. The second point about the Lemma case. Now, Ms. Mo asked how come you didn't name names, but of course we don't want to conduct public trial on civil servants. First, you have to see whether there is any criminal liability involved, and after criminal investigation is completed, there will be internal disciplinary action, and there's something internal. So you don't want to name names, is it because you do not want to subject civil servants to public trial? But after the case is completed, you will give an account, wouldn't you?
On the Civil Aviation Department, if you observe any conflicts or roles, we can further elaborate on the situation. Since we don't have any representatives from the Civil Aviation Department today, it's very hard for me to comment. However, we will look at our policy for retired civil servants, and we will explain why there is no conflicts of interest. For technical issues, I think we have to delegate to the panel of economic development. And the reason why we don't disclose specific names is it has been explained by Professor Chung. It's out of legal considerations. We will continue with the procedures, and we will look at disciplinary actions. We will obtain legal advice on these issues. Once we have completed all the works, once we are done with criminal investigation and studies, we will seek further legal advice before deciding whether to disclose the information. We will not compromise the fairness or privacy of the civil servants. We will look at all these considerations before coming up with a decision. We cannot answer the chairperson's question right now because we have to wait until the work is done and legal advice is obtained. As far as I know, very often for investigations on civil servants, the threshold for prosecution is very high, and even if civil servants are proved to have misconducts, the government will conduct an internal investigation. Can you guarantee that you will do the same if you find any misconduct among the staff? If the report recommends any disciplinary action against our staff, we will certainly follow up. At the same time, we are aware that criminal investigation is going on, and we would consider whether our investigation would interfere with the criminal investigation, and we will wait until the results of the investigation is available, because the outcome will affect our penalties or disciplinary action. We have to look at it case by case. We have a period for disciplinary inquiry, so you're not ruling out the possibility, right? If any misconduct is found, you will begin disciplinary inquiry, right? The disciplinary inquiry is different from criminal investigation. If any misconduct is found, the staff will be subject to disciplinary action or criminal action. Even if a staff is cleared of criminal liability, we will still look into to see whether any disciplinary action is warranted. We will see how the situation develops. we are looking at it in terms of relationship between employer and employee. We have to be careful with what we disclose, and we must make sure we are fair to the staff under investigation. I'm just asking for a progress report. If it's only a progress update, we can certainly entertain the request. However, if we are to disclose details, we must be very careful. Yes, we are aware of this. Emily Lau. I hope the SCH understands the rage of the families of the victims. We have spent months before the SCH agrees to apologize. You have to consider public opinion. We understand that you have to protect the staff, but at the same time you must protect public interests as well. I hope the government can review the situation. The incident has happened so long ago and you're not disclosing enough details, and the families of the victims aren't satisfied. This is a very big problem. We don't have information here today, but these are issues the administration have to think about. You cannot blame Professor Chung for everything. The government must be accountable to the public. You cannot just hide behind the so-called investigations, because they can take 3 or 4 years. You can see the unrest among the victims' families. We don't want to see the same situation as the Manila hostage victims. We understand you have to balance the interests of civil servants, but now the situation is very biased. I hope the administration can disclose more details. I hope you can give us more information, give the public more information. Professor Chung has met the families, as far as I know. People have the feeling that you are just trying to protect the civil servants rather than safeguarding public interest. Does the Secretary have anything to say? We have to strike a balance. The investigation of the Lama marine disaster, it will be reported. Professor Chung will give an update next week. But we must make sure not to interfere with criminal investigations. And that's why we cannot have a very complete report at this stage. We are not trying to overprotect certain people, but this is only out of procedural justice. We are thinking about the criminal investigation. We have consulted the DOJ before making up a decision. We understand that the public and the families would like to know more about the investigation results, but I also hope everyone understand that we cannot interfere with criminal investigations. I hope the government can go back and review the entire system on how to disclose more to the public and LegCo, and you shouldn't just hide behind the lawyers. I think you're being biased. Claudio Mo, second round, please. I'm not satisfied with the government's response that the government and civil servants have an employer-employee relationship. This is all too obvious. Of course, normally we have to think about privacy. However, we are not just talking about public matters or public money. This is a matter of great public interest. If you are not even disclosing information to the families, they have already agreed to confidentiality agreements, but still you are trying to drag it on. You're hiding behind legal advice, and every time you are trying to put the blame on Professor Chang, we are talking about a gross misconduct of civil servants, including the former director of Marine who was on pre-retirement leave. You're saying that it's not the right time, and you mentioned criminal investigations, privacy concerns. This response is not acceptable. We are talking about 39 lives. How can you be accountable to the Hong Kong public? As I said, we will consult legal advice on the internal disciplinary inquiry. And on the full disclosure of investigation results, I have nothing to add. This is not the decision of Professor Chang. This is a collective decision made by the government after consulting legal advice. Can you look at preceding cases? In the future, we will come back to the same question. On agenda item 3, any more questions from members? If not, we'll move on to item 4, an overview of the civil service establishment, strength, retirement, resignation, and age profile. The government has submitted papers, so let's invite Mr. Tang to outline the papers. I want to share a few points. Overall speaking, the age profile of civil servants are in line with the overall population of Hong Kong. Since 2006-7, the number of civil servants from 40 to 59 make up 2/3 of the total task force. In April 2007, we saw that more civil servants have joined the ranks, and the percentage of civil servants aged 20 to 29 has increased from 8.3% in 2009 to 11.4% in 2012-13. And on the establishment, for 5 years since 2008-2009, 6,600 new posts were created to meet demands. And in the amended budget in 2012-13, there was 17,000 places, and it made up 4.1% of the overall working force in Hong Kong. From 2012 to 2013, the wastage was it made up 3.8%, and the main reason of leaving was retirement, and a small amount resigned. And the wastage remains low in the past few years. The resignation rate was under 0.5%, and most of them left during probation period. And on the retirement of civil servants, we will talk about it later. We have 4,000 or so civil servants retiring from 2001 to 2013, and from 2002 to 2023, around 7,000 civil servants retired during the 5-year period. and there will be a decline in the 5-year period ending 2027 to 2028 to around 4,500. The number of retirees in the coming decade will be is expected to grow, and we will tackle this issue by continually recruiting, and we will speed up recruitment exercises, and the Commission of Audit has published a working report, and we will adopt the recommendations. We will streamline civil service establishments and speed up recruitment exercises. And we have adopted measures to streamline recruitment procedures. We will further streamline recruitment exercises, and we'll look at the vacancies of civil servants posts.
We also have an established system for succession planning in various departments. We would like to have early succession planning, and regularly with the permanent secretaries and heads of departments, we will review with them their succession planning arrangement, and if necessary, they could take appropriate measures early. And then on the aging population and the shrinking of the workforce, these are challenges we face. In the consultation paper we published on the 3rd of April, we proposed some measures to extend the service of civil servants. About the details of this consultation exercise, we will provide them at the next item. Members, Mr. Wong Kwok Hing, Mr. Poon, Mr. Kwok would like to ask questions, and Ms. Emily Lau for 4 members. 5 minutes each, please. Mr. Wong first. Thank you. On the retirement proportion of directorate officers, that's gone up compared to the past. Have you done any analysis? How come for directorate civil servants, do they retire on time, or what about early retirement? What is the percentage? So can you tell us about early retirement involving directorate officers? What is the ratio there? Mr. Mack. Mr. Mack. Thank you, Madam Chair. In this paper, we have not included information on early retirement because, as you know, for colleagues on the new pension system, if they joined the service before 1987 and then they converted from the old pension scheme to the new pension scheme, then they could retire early. Now, we do not have the information in the paper. We'll see what we've got. I think we need to sort out some of the data first. Why I asked this question, because exactly this point is not included in the paper. I don't know if you try to evade the issue or whether you're not paying enough attention to this issue. Here we're talking about a succession gap which we need to address. We're talking about transfer of experience. But then for directorate officers, of course, they have a wealth of experience, and if they retire early, then in terms of service provision or management, there will be a loss of invaluable experience and knowledge. We have seen many directorate officers who were rising stars in terms of management or public service delivery. Many performed well, but for these rising stars, when we were expecting them to play heavier role, they then took early retirement. They switched to public organizations or the business sector. I think the administration needs to find out why that's the case. We shouldn't just look at the absolute number or the percentage. We have to find out why we are not able to retain such talents. So, Secretary, could you please respond? Thank you for the question. There are 2 points. Now, Mr. Mack said we would go back and look up the information for you. Another point about directorate officers and the succession issue. Now, whether it's early retirement, as we try to explain, is hard to say. Within the system, say a colleague could retire at the age of 55, but because he switched to the new pension system, he could stay on at 60, but he could still retire at 55, and strictly speaking, it's not early retirement. But then, of course, some colleagues may choose to leave after 55, but before 60. There are such cases as well. We'll see how bad the situation is. We'll have to first collate the information. But of course, we could handle such a situation because every department has a succession plan. And we cater for different scenarios. What if colleagues stay on till 60 or not? And then, of course, we also have a mechanism to try to find out what colleagues plan before they reach 60. Maybe they would say, I plan to stay on till 60, or maybe I would only work another year or 2 for personal reason or family reasons. Well, then the heads of departments should have a good gauge of these cases. And maybe, if necessary, they should promote people sooner or make sure there's a transfer of experience. Now, about retaining experience within the department, there are also cases of people staying on beyond 60 for a little longer. So there are ways to deal with the situation. Maybe there are others who haven't reached the normal retirement age, maybe in their 30s or 40s. People choose to quit and join the private sector or the subvented organizations and so on. Well, yes, there are such cases, but on the whole, there is not a large number of such cases. The wastage rate still remains around 3%. It's not enough to affect the overall situation. Mr. Poon, Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chair. Annex A of the paper, Establishment and Strength of the Civil Service. Towards the end of the 1990s, there were about 175,000. Well, you say there's been an increase in the size of civil service, but still just 170,000 when compared to the population. At that time, in the 1990s, there were just 5 or close to 6 million people in Hong Kong. Now, the Secretary just said that you have increased the establishment this year, but I think it would take a long time before you could go back to the previous level. Now, the Director of Audit has pointed out that some civil servants have to work unduly long hours. That includes the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department. In fact, many frontline staff are under heavy pressure. So would you consider further increasing the number of posts in these departments so as to relieve the pressure on existing staff? Another point is on recruitment. You said you would go by the Director of Audit's report. It's true, in some cases the recruitment took too long. I think in one case it was over 300 days. You said you will speed up and streamline the recruitment procedure. But do you have any specific arrangement in mind? How are you going to streamline and accelerate the recruitment procedure further? Well, let me answer some of the questions, and then I'll ask Mr. Mack to supplement. First, on the size of the civil service. There is not an absolute target or what is the right number of civil servants. It depends on the needs in the community. As you know, we have to make sure public money is spent properly. So we do not have a target of going back to, say, 190,000. We look at the actual needs year from year. We also have to have regard to the financial position of the government. As I said, the percentage of the civil service as a total of the workforce, the percentage remained more or less stable. It's not a case that because the population is larger, we need to increase hire more civil servants, because maybe there is automation or other processes that could help us change the mode of service delivery without increasing staff. And in the year 14-15, we're still going to increase the number of civil servants, as I mentioned. Of course, if any departments see the need for extra staff, they could do so in the course of the financial year. But then, as I said, maybe some departments may then choose to automate some of the processes to reduce the demand on manpower, or maybe they could adjust their service goals, or then they could redeploy staff from the less urgent tasks and so on. Because, as you know, sometimes it's not just by merely increasing the staff size that we could address all needs. Now, of course, there are peak periods. For some services, there is a seasonal pattern. So perhaps during peak period, we could hire extra hands on a time-limited basis. And maybe these are not civil servants, but we could still hire, say, departed staff to come and help out during peak periods of service demands. On following up on the audit report, perhaps Mr. Mack could supplement. About the recruitment of civil servants, the Civil Service Bureau and all relevant departments are very much concerned about filling vacancies as soon as possible, and we will certainly take concrete action to follow up on the report. But then at the same time, we have to ensure a due process where civil service recruitment is concerned. As you know, usually there are many applicants for civil service posts that leads to a heavy workload. So we have to go through the procedure properly, and that takes a bit of time. But then since 2012, we've streamlined recruitment procedures. We have taken certain measures. For instance, in the past, when we vetted the qualifications of a candidate or applicant, we have to make sure that there is proper vetting to make sure the minimum requirements met before we proceed to other steps, such as examinations or selection interviews. But now we're doing it in tandem. That is, we will verify qualifications in parallel with some other recruitment procedures, such as examinations or interviews. And then, hopefully, then with this parallel approach, we could compress the whole time frame for a recruitment exercise. Now, the audit report is out. We will certainly follow up on the recommendations of the Audit Commission. We'll look at a number of areas. For instance, making better use of information technology. We'll see whether there's room to do so. And then, among the applicants, we'll also see how many do not meet our basic requirements. Actually, there's a large percentage there. So we try to see whether we could lower the percentage through the use of technology or a computer program, for instance. For example, applicants could launch an application online, and then we will verify with the system whether the qualifications are met, and that will help to save work later on. And we could also perhaps promote further communication with applicants, say by the use of emails. That might help to save time as well. So the whole idea is to compress the whole recruitment exercise as far as possible. We try to streamline it as far as possible, but at the same time, we have to ensure there's a due process.
Like,
in the coming 10 to 15 years, we will see a lot of civil servants retiring, and that's a matter of fact. The government said they already have arrangements in place. They're hiring a lot of young people. However, I haven't seen any specific measures. It's good to hire new blood, but the question is, how do we retain them? The departments have to think of ways to retain the staff. Right now, civil servants aren't paid as well as the past anymore. They're, in terms of pay, working hours, they're similar to people working in private institutes. And second, there are different grades of civil servants, of retiring civil servants. Some of them are directorate grades, some of them aren't. In theory, when they are having their pre-retirement leave, vacancies should be available, and we are aware of that. However, we are talking about the problem of succession and transfer of knowledge and experience. If the recruitment exercise take place at such a late stage, how can we succeed the retirees? I think that the time frame has to be brought forward, and the recruitment exercises have to begin earlier, before the pre-retirement leaves of the retirees. In terms of transfer of experience or knowledge, the transfer of knowledge might be unsatisfactory. Would it lead to a drop in quality of public services? This is something the public is concerned about. You said there is a mechanism in place. However, we don't know the details. Can you give us more information? Can you give us more information to give confidence to the public? Since we have a succession problem, if we want our new blood to take up the existing posts as soon as possible, can existing contract staff be given priority in the recruitment? We understand the jobs of civil servants. We have to compete with the private market. However, we still see an appeal in the civil service. We cannot directly compare salaries. However, our posts are relatively more stable, and we are hoping to attract people with a sense of mission. Basically, recruitment is not a problem for us. For every post, we have a lot of applicants. But I agree that our salaries and remuneration packages have to be comparable to the private market. And we perform a pay adjustment, and every 6 years we conduct a pay level survey to ensure that this goal is met. On the issue of pre-retirement leave, we have reminded departments and bureaus that they must carry out their recruitments early. They can create a new non-recurrent post to fill this void. if they want a new employee to be on board before a retiree takes his or her leave, then they have to do something. I understand that you will have new employees on board before the retirees go on leave. But my point is, you have to bring the recruitment exercise forward so that you will have new staff on board before the retirees take their leave. This is a challenge because we're talking about two people doing the same job. However, there can be a transition period. However, if a civil servant is still on board, we cannot possibly have another another employee. There is an overlap. There will be an overlap. On the issue of succession, on the issue of succession gap, if we know the retirement schedules of the staff, the directorate staff would be responsible for planning the schedule of retirees. We can consider asking retirees to stay on for longer periods. And these are something we can do within our system, and we would review these issues with the departments and bureaus from time to time. We have to carry out public recruitment exercises to ensure a fair and transparent process. We can see that existing government contract staff have certain advantages over those who have no government experience. Ms. Emily Lau. We should discuss the topics today together with our the topic of extending the working lives of civil servants. We are trying to tackle the issue of succession gaps, and that's why we have suggestions like extending the working lives of civil servants or transfer of staff between departments. This situation is not normal. If we know ahead of time the retirement schedules of our staff, then we won't run into such problems. The paper said the recruitments have stopped since 6 years ago, and there were voluntary retirement schemes, and we are well aware of these measures. If you have regular reviews with the departments, we will not run into the problems of succession gaps. When you look at a wastage rate of 3.8%, it's very low. The Electoral Secretariat conducted a study. The wastage of electoral secretaries' assistance is as high as 30%. Some outstanding staff might have left, but they are many of them have gone to quasi-government institutions for more money. So why do we have this problem? Why do we have the problem of succession? You have a scheme in place to tackle the problem, but the scheme has been suspended. So what has gone wrong? As you said, a lot of people want to be civil servants. You are very protective. You give them great salaries. So why do we have this problem? Would you have a new scheme to tackle this situation? Is there something wrong in terms of planning for successes? One of my legal assistants have gone to the government and to take up the post of AO. Thank you for the question. Generally speaking, succession is not a problem. Even if we have multiple retirees within the department, we can still prevail. Most departments can tackle the problem because they can promote new staff. So overall speaking, we don't see a problem. However, for certain grades, they might face a challenge. As I mentioned, extension of retirement dates or transfer of staff, these measures can tackle specific problems. Certain grades might not have a large number of staff, and certain grades might directly compete with the private market. In those scenarios, we have special measures, which we will outline in the next paper. At the same time, we will look at the overall population policy. We will invite certain staff to stay on for longer. So what grades are we talking about? Are we talking about disciplined services like the police force? They're not a small department. They have more than 30,000 people. We should foresee this situation, right? What grades are we talking about? We're not talking about departments, but grades. Certain grades compete directly with the government. For example, doctors. They are crucial to the entire civil service. We might have succession problems for doctors. However, we don't see a big problem in the succession of disciplined services. What about the police force? As far as I know, it's not a problem. Ms. Claudia Mo. I understand that a lot of people are applying for CS posts, and as you said, a lot of applicants are fighting for the same post. So we shouldn't be too worried on the succession of posts, with the exception of public doctors. We are talking about very professional posts where they can launch their own business. Is it common for the government to for part-time staff to help to deal with certain vacancies? Is this situation common? If you invite retired staff to take up part-time positions, you said the recruitment of CS posts is transparent. So is this process entirely open and fair? Would some of them be recruited only because they are familiar with the people or system? For senior staff, for example, directorate staff, if they take up a part-time post and then take up another job in the private markets, the cooling down period no longer applies. Senior civil servants who take up private jobs and then decide to come back to the government, will you exercise discretion? Because we might be talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of public money. We are talking about big business deals. Will you consider reviewing the practice?
Thank you, Ms. Mo, for your questions. 2 points. First, colleagues who have retired and then come back to work on a contract basis. Well, that's always happened, but in the past 2 years there have been more such cases because there were specific tasks to be handled. Now, there are 2 examples that I can give you. One is about the restriction on export of baby infant formulas. We needed to have more colleagues helping out over a short period of time. We don't know how long that may take, and then we need experienced customs officers to help out. And then another example is the retrofitting of footbridges with escalators. Again, here we need experienced civil service colleagues to come back and help out. So we believe this arrangement could help us where time-limited posts are concerned, or where time-limited tasks are concerned. If we increase permanent posts, it may not be appropriate because once we create a post, we won't delete it. And some colleagues actually are happy to come back to work on a part-time basis. They might not want to take up full-time employment for health or other reasons. And should we have open recruitment? Of course, we offer open recruitment, but then perhaps for certain tasks there is need for a specific type of experience, and it's reasonable, therefore, in this case, is to hire retired colleagues. Now, when we hire retired colleagues, of course, the department will make sure that there is a proper procedure. For example, open invitation of applications. There is a proper open selection process. Control of work arrangement for retired civil servants. Of course, here maybe we talk about directorate officers because they could have been involved in important decisions. Now, for directorate officers, as you know, there is a sanitization period after retirement, and they would have to seek approval for taking up jobs. But after a certain period of time, of course, there's nothing more we can do because we need to strike a proper balance. On the one hand, we do not want to undermine the right of a retired colleague to work. For non-civil service contract staff status, as you know, usually NCSC staff are hired to perform time-limited tasks. These are not permanent tasks. So, therefore, often they would not be involved in the decision-making process. Usually it doesn't happen, actually. Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Secretary mentioned that for various reasons, there's an aging civil service. It's important, therefore, to bring in new bloods. Now, in terms of the condition of service, pension arrangement, and so on, and promotion prospects, of course, these are factors people would consider whether they would join the civil service. Now, young people, after they've joined the civil service, say for the semi-professional grades or professional grades, how long usually will it take for them to be promoted to the next higher rank? And I understand there is the acting arrangement. Is there a time limit on that? Because there are cases that someone's been acting for a long time without confirmation. It's not fair, actually, to those concerned, and it also undermines their motivation. So for staff acting on a higher rank, is there any consideration on the time frame? I understand that there are many civil servants who've reached the maximum of the pay scale. I understand there is an annual increment, of course. There's an increment point, apart from the across the service pay adjustment. There are many now who are on the maximum pay point. And there are no promotion prospects also for these people. How do you motivate such staff? Or would their motivation be compromised? And then for some civil servants, perhaps it's for their own reasons, they are not considered for promotion over an extended period. I understand some have been staying in the same rank for 10, 20 years without any promotion. In these cases, have you done anything? Say, give them more training so they could act in a higher rank, and then they have a chance to promotion. Otherwise, they will stay put in their original rank. And then how can you make sure that they won't be affected by the lack of promotion? You know, their efficiency and performance and so on. Secretary? The appeal of the civil service, well, it's about the pay. Even though there's no longer a pension arrangement, the civil service provident fund is still much better off than many such funds in the market. And our contribution could be as high as 25%. Of course, we want to lead as a good employer. For example, we take the lead in implementing paternity leave, 5-day working week. We want to provide a good workplace for people to engage in meaningful work. Of course, pay is also an appeal. Now, for civil servants, they do not get bonuses or so on. Perhaps to them, the only form of reward is increment. Now, on average, it takes 14 years for a civil servant to be promoted to the next rank. We do think it's a bit too long, so we're looking at ways, perhaps for colleagues with potential, maybe even if they are more junior, we will promote them. Otherwise, as I said, as you mentioned, it might affect the morale of staff. So we are concerned about the promotion issue. An acting appointment, if it's acting for administrative convenience, usually the acting arrangement won't be too long. But if it's acting with a view to promotion, and if the staff member performs well, usually he will be promoted. It won't take too long. But perhaps in some cases, the staff member doesn't meet the requirements, then there are two scenarios. One is to stop the acting arrangement. Or in another scenario is that maybe he's still not performing good enough, but he could be given more time to prove himself. So, but we agree that acting appointments should not be too long. Is there a time limit? if someone's been acting for too long, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, is there any system in place? In general, it's about a year. But of course, it varies from grade to grade. But perhaps in one case, we're sure this person is fit for promotion, but we want to observe him a bit longer, then it may take over a year or so. But usually, the test is for about a year. But there are few cases where the acting is longer than that. Of course, there are isolated cases too, with longer acting periods. For staff members reaching the maximum pay point, that's a large number, about 60%, but I think that percentage is going to drop because we have more younger officers now, so it will take some time before they reach the maximum of the pay scale. Now, how do we keep them motivated? Promotion prospects, of course, is one way. Unless a person is about to reach retirement, everyone has a chance to be promoted. But of course, maybe there are not many promotion posts around, or maybe the person hasn't yet met the requirement, but he's still performing fine. Then we may consider giving the staff member new challenges. Now, even if a person is not promoted, it doesn't mean he has to do the same work over and over again. Otherwise, he won't be motivated. So we do have ways to try to keep staff motivated. Permanent Secretary. Well, the Secretary has actually given a detailed reply, but let me just add one point. On acting with a view to promotion, the promotion board may be of the view that for that staff member, as long as he acts a little longer, he would be promoted, usually 6 months to 1 year. That's one scenario. So within that 1 year, if that staff performs well, of course he'll be promoted. But if he doesn't perform to satisfaction, then the promotion board may review the case and ask him to stop the acting arrangement. The other kind of acting arrangement is over a longer period. There is not a time limit. Even though there is not a time cap, usually the promotion board will review the case annually to track progress. Now, as to when a colleague is ready for promotion, there could be a number of factors at play. So that's why there is no such thing as a time limit. But usually is within a year or two, the promotion board may be able to see and be sure whether the colleague is ready for promotion. And for acting appointments under the watch of the Public Service Commission, the Public Service Commission may also comment on the case. So that is, if someone's been acting for too long and still not promoted, the PSC may comment on it. Now, training for colleagues. Every year, in the appraisal report of an officer, the supervising officer should have made recommendations on the career development of the officer. For example, the room for improvement has been identified in the report, and then the supervising officer may suggest strengthening training in that area. And then the department will provide such training to the colleague. So that's how it works. Madam Chair, allow me to supplement. Now, some colleagues have expressed concern about cronyism. That is, some staff are not up to standard, but then you give them training, and so that they could realize the potential and move to a higher rank. That would keep them motivated. But then there are civil servants who've been in the same rank for 20, 30 years. Does it mean these are cases of failure? Failure not to do with the staff member. Perhaps it's about the training also of civil servants. Maybe something's gone wrong. I understand some professionals do stay in the same rank for a long time. You mentioned 14 years on average for promotion, but some have been in the same post for 18, 20 years. So shouldn't there be a system to review such cases? especially for professionals. If there is better training, professionals should be able to do better.
Secretary, I cannot comment on very specific scenarios, but I understand that some staff have served in the government for a long time without being promoted. But we have to look at specific departments. Sometimes they are performing well in their grades, but they might fail to adjust to a higher capacity. The promotion system of the civil service is rather competitive. We are not trying to promote offer natural promotion per se to the employees. We have to look at the capabilities of the civil servants. If a civil servant is not particularly outstanding, younger staff might overtake them in the hierarchy. It might seem unfair sometimes, but this is necessary. If younger staff who are capable cannot be promoted, it doesn't make sense. Apart from training for promotions, we have other types of training to enhance the knowledge and skill sets of the civil servants, so professionals can take up other positions. Thank you, Secretary. We have a lot of questions on this agenda. Any other questions? If not, on to consultation on extension of the service of civil servants. I'll have Mr. Mack introduce the paper. I'd like to use a slideshow to outline the consultation paper on the extension of the service of civil servants. As you know, in our previous population policy paper, Hong Kong is facing aging and shrinking of labor force. We have statistics in 2012. We have in 2012. And by 2041, we will have 2.56 million people aged 65 or above, or one-third of the projected population. In terms of labor force participation rate, in 2012, we had 58.8%, and by 2041, the figure will drop to 49.5%. So this shows the situation of aging. And this has been mentioned in the population policy reports, that one solution is to extend the working life of the overall labor force. And under this backdrop, since last year, we conducted a study on extension of the service of civil servants. The government, as Hong Kong's biggest employer, has to examine possible options for extending the working life of civil servants to allow us to respond better to demographic challenges. That's the first point. Second, in terms of the overall civil service establishment, in the 1980s, we saw a quick growth of the civil service. In the coming 5 to 10 years, we expect a lot of them, of civil servants, retiring. And the number of retirees will be higher compared with the past. we will examine whether the high retirement numbers will create succession problems, and if so, how will we tackle these issues. We will just outline some figures. When we look at the overall number of retirees among the CS, from 2008 to 2019 to 2012 to 2013, the average number of retirees was 4,200 per year, representing 2.7% of the overall number of retirees. And for the 5-year period ending 2017 to 2018, the number of retirees will increase to around 6,000. And for the next 5-year period ending 2022-2023, it will further rise to about 7,000. And for the next 5-year period ending 2017-2018, the number will drop to about 5,400 or 3.4%, and the declining trend will continue. And we'll look at the situation of succession for most grades. For most grades, vacancies arising from retirement could be filled by promotion and recruitment. And this is a situation we can certainly manage. A few grades with small establishments, we're talking about professional or technical grades. They might need to retain certain civil servants beyond the retirement age in order to meet their needs. From the civil service management perspective, there isn't a need to extend the retirement age of all civil servants across the board. However, in facing population aging, we have grounds for introducing a higher retirement age for civil servants. And we will adopt flexible retirement and employment recruitment exercises in order to meet the operational and succession needs of different grades and departments. When we draw up our framework for retirement and employment initiatives, we want to meet 3 needs. First, to keep pace with demographic changes of Hong Kong. And respond to challenges arising from population aging. And second, for departmental management, we want to equip them with effective HR tools to flexibly address different operational and succession needs of different grades and departments. And for civil servants, we want to provide a lot of them want to continue to serve after beyond their retirement, and we will provide appropriate channels so that those with the right caliber and aspirations can continue to serve the government in different ways. And we have several principles. And the new initiatives should not be compulsory. They should be available on a voluntary basis for civil servants. They should be able to make their own choice. The applications should go through a transparent and objective selection process. And subject to operational and succession needs, we need to provide sufficient incentives for civil servants to continue their service beyond retirement age. However, we also need to ensure prudent use of public funds. Third, we must contain liabilities on retirement benefits to minimize additional costs incurred by taxpayers. Fourth, we should minimize adverse impacts on the promotion prospects of serving officers, and we have to inject new blood into the civil service to keep pace with the times. We have 4 recommendations in our framework. First, to adopt a higher retirement age for civil service new recruits. 2, to provide more flexibility for departmental management to further employ officers after they have reached retirement age to fill civil service posts. Number 3, to introduce a new post-retirement service contract scheme for engaging retired civil servants on a targeted basis to fill contract positions. Number 4, to streamline the control regime of post-service employment for non-directorate, frontline, and supporting civil servants. First, higher retirement age for new recruits. For civilian grades, we propose extending the retirement age by 5 years to 65. For discipline services grades, the principle is the same. We recommend extending it by 5 years to extending the retirement age by 5 years. However, considering the unique nature of the work, we recommend physical or relevant assessments for civil servants aged 57 to 60 to ensure that they can serve up to 60 years of age. For new recruitments, we will look at financial implications for new recruits. They are hired under the CSPF scheme. The voluntary contribution rate is linked to the number of years served. If we extend the retirement age of new recruits, their service periods will also increase, and the contributions by the government will also increase. So we will look at the financial implications of this arrangement. And second, if we increase the retirement age by 5 years across the board, will we require a transitional period? If we extend the retirement age from 60 to 65, for the new recruits who will retire in 30 or 35 years, if their retirement age is extended by 5 years, we will have to wait for a longer time before the next batch of staff will retire. The attrition rates during this period will increase. Would promotion or recruitment rates be affected? For such situation, will we adopt a gradual approach? So we will study these possibilities. Be further employment mechanism. We have an existing mechanism in place with enough grounds. We can continue to hire staff beyond their retirement age, and there is room for adjustment. And the period of extension should be flexible. Right now, the maximum period for final extension is currently set at 90 days. Can we further extend this period? For example, extending it to 120 days. In some other situations, the maximum period for retainment is 1 year. Can we extend it to 5 years? Can we relax the criteria for approval? We can consider the grounds of transfer of knowledge or experience, and the further employment mechanism does not apply for civil servants under the new pension scheme. We recommend expanding the mechanism to civil servants admitted after 2006. So if the need arises, we can also consider hiring these civil servants. That said, we have the process must be transparent and there must be enough grounds in order to not affect the promotion prospects of existing staff. We propose that officers on further employment should not be eligible for further promotion. Otherwise, they would hamper the prospects of existing staff. The third suggestion is a new PRSC scheme. We recommend setting up a new scheme for so that department can meet ad hoc needs, and certain departments might need the skill and experience of existing civil servants. And again, we have to make sure that the selection process is transparent and objective, and the departments must have well-justified circumstances. And the new posts are not part of the CS establishment, and the impacts on promotion, establishment, etc. will be minimal. And fourth, streamlining control regime on post-service outside work.
Now, for the civil service or for the workforce in Hong Kong as a whole, we would like to encourage people to stay in the labor market. So that's why we have to consider whether under the current regime, for non-directorate civil servants, especially those at junior ranks, how they could pursue post-retirement career. Now, at the moment, for model scale 1 colleagues, they are already allowed to take up post-service outside work after retirement without prior approval. So we have to see whether there is a need or there is room to extend this arrangement to other frontline officers at junior ranks. So if they wish to stay in the labor market after retirement but not in the civil service, we don't want them to be affected by the overly stringent mechanism. Consultation period that would go up to the 2nd of August this year. And of course, we'll engage in active exchange with the staff sides and the departmental management. And we'll try to collect views from other colleagues. And having collected all the feedback, we'll further look into very different issues such as the financial implications of proposals and so on. And then we'll decide on the way forward and flesh out the implementation details. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mack. 6 members have indicated they wish to ask questions. Can I propose 5 minutes each, but that will take half an hour. So if members don't mind, I will extend the meeting by 10 minutes at most, okay? Mr. Lee Chiak-yen, oh, he's not in the room. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Thank you, Madam Chair. 5 minutes each. The administration has proposed an extension of the retirement age. I think in the long run, you should hire more civil servants to address the long-term shortage of manpower and the succession gap. And you should reduce the number of civil service posts. Instead, you should create more permanent posts. Now, I've been following up on that for many years. And I hope you will do more to create more posts. permanent posts, I mean. On the proposal to extend the service of civil servants, there are 3 points of concern. One, you have to keep at bay cronyism. You have to ensure there is no favoritism. This is the first and foremost principle. And you have to make sure that normal promotion prospects of civil servants are not affected by the delayed retirement. So those who deserve promotion must not be affected. That's the second point of concern. The third point of concern, there must not be across-the-board extension of service. Staff should have free choices, and their free choices must not be taken away. So these are 3 important principles. I like response from the administration on this. And in your PowerPoint, number 10, that is to adopt a high retirement age for new recruits. Now, for new recruits, we're proposing a retirement age of 65 for civilian posts and 60 for disciplined services. But should we consider this new arrangement for new recruits? Should there be a mechanism for new recruits to opt, say, for a civilian staff member, maybe at 60 he could choose to retire or choose to go on. So there should be an opting mechanism for new civilian recruits. It's the same for disciplined services. That is, you give an option to the new recruits to retire either at 60 or at the original retirement age 55 or 57. So shouldn't new recruits be given a choice? Otherwise, for new civil service recruits, it may not be a fair practice. Secretary, thank you for the questions. Let me respond, and perhaps my colleagues should supplement later. First, that is, long-term tasks should be taken up by civil servants, and non-civil service contract staff should be replaced. As I explained, this is our policy. We are moving in that direction. So the concern about cronyism, yes, we fully appreciate it. But as I said, we've talked to different departments. We'll make sure that the selection would be open and fair, and it would not be decided by, say, a single person. Actually, there is also approval process involving the Civil Service Bureau or even the Public Service Commission. So that should. And the third point, we agree that normal promotion must not be affected because, as I pointed out, concerns have been expressed, especially among the younger officers. Now, if people stay on another 5 years, would affect the promotion prospects of younger officers, and then younger officers may choose to quit, so we have to be careful about that. Now, giving new recruits an option. Now, for existing or giving the choice to officers, the department has to be sure if they keep certain officer, would other officers' promotion prospects be affected? And for the person that is to stay, is he meeting the requirements, and does he have a certain set of knowledge that's required in the department? So we have to be sure about that. Because in the private market, there is similar arrangement for extending the service of would-be retirees. So we have to consider the performance of the officer concerned. We have to consider whether the person possesses a set of knowledge required in the department. Now, on new recruits, and the concern was expressed. If we give people, as I said, if we allow a longer retirement, a higher retirement age, people will face the dilemma whether to leave at 60 or 65. Yes, it could create difficulties, and that's why we're proposing for new recruits, we will only adopt a higher retirement age for new recruits only, not for serving staff. And perhaps maybe 10 years from now, people will look at retirement differently. Maybe then people would take a 65 to be the normal retirement age. That's why for new recruits, we propose a retirement age of 65 for civilian staff across the board and 60 for disciplined staff. But I think what's important is when people choose to join the civil service, they know this is the arrangement, so they do have a choice. Mr. Lee Chak-yen, the Labour Party is all for a higher retirement age because then we won't be wasting human resources. And of course, there is also the problem of a gap. If we could extend the retirement age, that will help to lessen the gap or narrow the gap. Now, first, my question is about disciplined services, not new recruits, but the serving staff. Disciplined officers now retire at 55. Could they also go up to 65 or 60? What is the arrangement for them? Because it's not mentioned in the paper. Of course, I'm against the Commissioner of Police being able to extend his service, but then for other officers in disciplined services, they should be given a choice. My second question, have you done any calculation? Let's say for a colleague, he chooses to retire later and his application is approved, and then you won't have to pay him pension yet, right? Let's say if he extends his service from 60 to 65, so during the 5-year period, there is the advantage of not having to pay pension. But for that colleague, after 65, when he retires, he should receive a higher pension because he's got a longer length of service. So have you done any calculation? What is the arrangement, the offsetting points? Or you might end up saving money, actually, or it depends on how long that retiree lives. Another point, many civil service unions are concerned about cronyism. So is there a transparent mechanism? For example, you only base your decision on past appraisal reports in whether to grant an extension of service. Now, if it's about past appraisal performance, everybody could see that, and then there's no reason why you should make it difficult for an applicant. And then you may address the concern about cronyism. Would you do that? So 3 questions. Mr. Secretary? Okay, 3 questions. Thank you. For serving disciplined officers, the arrangement is the same for civilian staff. It's point B. Of course, there's a difference of 5 years in retirement age. That's always been the case. I have not heard any aspirations from disciplined officers that they want to work till 65. Of course, it has to do with the Civil Service Provident Fund as well. Now, for disciplined officers, because they retire earlier, so there's an additional 2.4% in government contribution to their Provident Fund. And so we do not see a need to change the arrangement at this point. If disciplined officers choose to work after retirement, we're proposing an additional 5 years. That means from 55 to 60. And it's not an one across-the-board arrangement. A person doesn't have to stay on another 5 years. Maybe the department only needs the officer for another 2 years, so we allow flexibility to the departments. And that leads me to your last question. At this point, it's hard for us to do any assessment. We don't know how long people may choose to stay on longer, 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. We wouldn't know. So we have to find out more from staff. But anyway, the whole exercise is not about saving money. That's not the purpose. And anyway, the spending's not so much on serving staff. The difference won't be much. It's just a few more years. But I think the difference is with afterwards when everybody works another 5 years. So we have to do more assessment there. But that doesn't mean the government won't go down that path. But anyway, we need to find out exactly what the implications are. We need to tell at least the LegCo members what it would cost the taxpayers in extra spending. But that's why I said perhaps during the 5 years when the officer is working, you don't have to pay him pension. Maybe you end up saving some money. So if the officer chooses to stay on another 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, at least you will save on the pension payment, right? Well, it's hard to look at it this way. Let's say a civil servant chooses to stay on. Of course, he hasn't retired, so he is not collecting pension. But then he will be collecting more pension afterwards because he will be working a few more years. So at the end of the day, of course, it also depends on the life expectancy of the person. But I would say probably we'll end up spending more because, as you know, after a decade or so is what we call then the retiree or the pensioner stands to win or whatever. That's how it's put usually. But anyway, as I said, the whole exercise is not about saving money. So we haven't done the calculations yet.
Thank you, Chairman. On the extension of retirement age of civil servants, we support the idea. The FTU feels that the civil service establishment serves as an indicator to the private market. They said people are saying that retiring at 60 is too early. And now if the government is extending the retirement ages of certain grades to 65, it sends a message to the private market. My concern is similar with that of other members. For recommendation A, the extension from 60 to 65 or from 65 to 70, from 65 to 67, is this just a short-term recommendation or will this be adopted in the future? Will the new recruits have a choice? Of course, we hope the new recruits will have a choice. If this is a permanent policy, it seems that the new recruits won't have much choice. So this is one thing we want to clarify. If everyone agrees, the new recruits have to retire at 60. I'm talking about civilian grades. Hong Kong is facing population aging, so we think that everyone should work until 65. So in response to Mr. Wong's question, the room for choice is not very large. However, 15 or 20 years later, will we review it again or extend the retirement age further to 70? We are not ruling out the possibility because it depends on social circumstances at that time. The solution A seems to be long-term. For solutions B and C, can the retirement age be further extended from 65 to 70? So I don't understand the logic. Are plans B and C just fallbacks to plan A? For existing staff, we will not amend their retirement terms in order to respect contracts. For a civilian grade civil servant who works until 60, if this civil servant is deemed useful by the department, the his or her working life can be extended by a maximum of 5 years. However, the situation is that not everyone wants to extend their retirements by 5 years. So it only applies for existing civil servants, right? So we have made it clear. A lot of civil servants prefer option C. A lot of retirees think that they should not affect the prospects of existing staff. They can continue to serve the public via short-term contracts. Option B might compromise the prospects of existing staff or their promotion prospects. I've heard from certain departments, and I'm not going to disclose their identities, that some staff have had their working lives extended. However, during that extension period, they cannot enjoy existing benefits of other staff, for example, parking lots. So can high-level guidelines be issued to make it clear that retirees must forego all their benefits or privileges? We understand that option C provides greater flexibility. We have heard comments from professional grades that they would continue to they prefer frontline grades rather than management grades, since they are not part of the establishment anymore. If these civil servants enjoy pensions, the situation is different from that of Plan B. If they continue to serve in the government, they will receive extra salaries. So it's my turn. I have one question. For civil servants under old schemes who retire at 55 or 60, I'm talking about existing civil servants. If they apply for re-employment, what happens with their pensions? So they're considered retired already, right? Will they earn pensions during those 2 or 3 years? Can they enjoy pensions and salaries at the same time? Perhaps the permanent secretary can explain the situation. It depends on whether the staff is on an old or new pension scheme. Around 110,000 civil servants are under the new pension scheme, and we only have a few thousand civil servants under the old scheme. Under existing practices, they can't. They are entitled to the retirement funds immediately. So the case is they will retire, get their retirement funds, and be re-employed. They will not enjoy pensions during the extended period, but the period of service will be considered, will be incorporated into the total time served at the government. The pensions will only be distributed the day when they eventually leave the government. This is a complicated situation, but I hope the government can do a better job. I'm sure civil service bodies will have a lot to say And I hope the public can also offer more opinion, including academics. And we can also learn from other countries. Some business sectors, they have doubts. Should they follow the government's example? When you have a new measure, what impacts would it have on the business sector? And second, for financial implications, we are of course very concerned. We agree that we should treat civil servants well because they have served the Hong Kong public with their hearts. We hope we can perform streamlining, etc. The government has a lot of foreign exchange reserves of over 700 billions. And over 300 billion would be used, are set aside for as retirement benefits for civil servants. So the government must be very careful. I hope the FS won't come back and say the sum will increase to 500 billion or more. I hope the Secretary can balance the interests. Our concern is not about treating civil servants well. The problem is most people have no retirement protections. We have been talking about universal retirement protections, but there is nothing as of yet. So the Secretary may say it's none of their business, but the government should be accountable. First, setting an example for business. Hong Kong doesn't have a statutory retirement age, so businesses can make up their own choice. However, from my experience, a lot of private constitutions would like to follow suit if the government decides to change. We can set an example for public bodies, and we have to be careful on financial implications. We must align with the general population policy, so we would strike an interest, strike a balance. So far, have you taken reference from other countries? Do you mean universal retirement protection? No, I'm referring to arrangements on extending the services of civil servants. Yes, we have learned from neighboring countries or other Western countries because they are facing similar problems. The trend, the overall trend is to push back the retirement ages. Finances are not a consideration of Hong Kong. As I said, we're not trying to save money from extending the retirement ages. The real driving force is the labor force of Hong Kong. Most countries have such tendency. So how do they execute the extension? Is there anything they are doing which we can learn from? We have learned from certain practices, but of course we cannot copy other countries exactly. For instance, the UK doesn't have a retirement age, a compulsory retirement age. In Singapore, retiring civil servants will be assigned another job. The thinking, the line of thoughts is similar to Hong Kong. Civil servants can continue to serve beyond their retirement age. Mr. Poon, the extension of retirement ages in civil servants is an area of concern, and people are comparing it with the private market. I think the issue of new recruits isn't controversial, but for the extension of existing civil servants, I'd just like to clarify one thing for staff admitted after the year 2000. They can enjoy the new scheme. The government contribution can only be withdrawn after age 65. I understand that a lot of civil servants would like an extension. Of course, they have a choice now. Can you fix a specific salary point? Can you give a choice to the civil servants? Of course, you have to respect contracts. Is this possible? And if not, what's the reason? And on the issue of cronyism, you said you will look at the issue. As some civil servants suggested, establishing an appeals mechanism. You said the consultation will last till the 2nd of August. Do you have to consult all the departments? Do you need information on the retirement ages before you can do anything else? Can you come up with calculations or preliminary estimations? First, on the issue of cronyism, we must make sure departments have transparent and fair systems. And the HOGs or HODs must be impartial in order to be accepted by the staff. We will enhance the guidelines to these heads of grades or departments. If we make the system too complicated, it might not be a good thing, and the departments might be reluctant to change. So an appeals mechanism might not be appropriate. You mentioned civil service under the Provident Fund scheme. If they decide to retire at 60, they can withdraw the funds. For those who retire at 60, can they draw their funds before deciding to take up employment again? This is something we can discuss later. I think reemployment hinges on operational needs and performance of the civil servants, the need for their experience or skill sets, etc. These are all the factors we would consider. New recruits won't be affected, but for civil servants admitted after the year 2000, there are concerns in terms of management. For financial implications, we will conduct an overall assessment. We will invite actuaries to do the math. But we cannot do calculations person by person.
So you mean it will be after the 2nd of August before you could have the financial implications, or do you have the figures now? Well, actually, we've started the task. When there is the final proposal, the figures will be there. Thank you. There are 2 more members on the list. Can I consult you? I can only consult the Deputy Chairman because there's just only 1 member left here. Now, before the end of the consultation period on the 2nd of August, do we wish to hold a public hearing to receive views from civil service groups? No. Well, before the report, the consultation document was out, we heard views from civil servants. I think it is important that we collect more views for the secretary. Okay, then we'll ask the clerk to make the arrangement. Now, the consultation period is to end in August on the 2nd. So how about a public hearing in the 3rd week of July? Let's see if there is a slot available. In July, there is a regular meeting. Usually it's the 3rd Monday there's a regular meeting, but if there's going to be overwhelming response for the public hearing, we have to see if we should schedule another meeting. Then we'll allow civil service unions or groups to come and give their views, okay? Thank you. Any other business, please? No? Then meeting adjourned. Thank you.